So welcome to CIS 118 Web Development and Design Foundations. Last time I presented to you the content in Chapter 9, which deals with forms and form controls. And forms are particularly useful in that they are what you put on your website to collect information from your users. And there's all kinds of really cool built-in input controls that will allow you to validate data that comes from a user without you having to write your own code or JavaScript to embed in the web page to do that. So those of you who watched my presentation, we were looking at how to set those features up and then send them off to a server, right? Because the form has to collect that information and then package it up, and you have to define the method either as a get or a post, and then the post is more secure in that it will encapsulate those data inside the HTTP transmission. And then I'm sorry, bear with me just for a minute. And then I gave you some homework assignments, right? So we did the review questions 1 through 15 out of 9. I assigned you the apply your knowledge 1 through 3, the hands-on 1 through 6, and then I asked that you do the focus on web design for that chapter. So do you guys have any questions before I go over the homework with you? Nothing? You found that presentation acceptable? I thought I was moderately well prepared on that one. So then let's jump over to the homework. So after we do the regular homework assignment, every week there's a running case, right? Or pretty much every week there's been a running case. And this week we're going to add a new page to our Pacific Trails Resort website, a reservations page, where you're going to collect information from the user and then send it off to the server to be processed. And of course, we're going to use the publisher's server script to do that because we don't really have our own server. So the only files you create for the case study for this week are the new reservations page, which would be reservations.html, and then you make a very minor modification to the style sheet to format the elements on that form, okay? So what am I trying to say, the short version? The running case study, you only submit 2 files this week, a modified version of your Pacific.css, and then a brand new page, reservations.html. Please don't submit anything other than those, all right? So let's jump over to the homework then. And I've already made the recommendation that if you're struggling a little bit with this stuff, to download the data files, the student data files that are in Canvas, and then work through the embedded hands-on exercises that are in the chapter. Okay. So, apply your knowledge 1 through 3. Predict the result. This is where you have to, in your mind's eye, be the browser, right? And if you were in doubt about what this code would do, you could certainly type it in and definitively see what that browser would do. But you should be able to look at these constructs and tell me what you would see in the browser. So the title is Predict the Result. So obviously you would see on the tab for that particular page, you would see Predict the Result. And I'm on page 436 of the 8th edition of the book. So I've got as a header element, contact us. And then underneath, I've got a form. And the form is a container tag, so it's got an open and closing tag. And within the form and /form, the next one is a field set. So the field set's going to do what? It's going to group all of those controls inside of a box, right? There'll be some type of border around it to show the user of your page that information is logically connected. And then inside the field set, you also see the use of a legend. So the legend would be the text that gets put at the top of that border to label that collection of controls on the form. So within the box, what do we have? Well, we have a text box that's going to have room for an email. And I told you in the presentation that the name and the ID should match. The ID is used on the web page. The name is used by the server to identify what those fields are and what the values that were submitted. And then we've got a line of text. And then we've got, what do we have here? Oh, we have, so if we have here with the text box, see where I have the select? So what does that create for us? See those list of options? I'm on page 436. Maybe you're on page 436 too. So that's a drop-down list, right? A select list or drop-down list. So depending upon whichever one they pick, you will associate a particular value with that choice. But that's a drop-down list. See where it says size equal 1? So that's a drop-down list where it'll only show one item or one option at a time unless they use the little caret to drop down and view them. Yes, no? Do you see that in your mind's eye? Maybe not. Okay, so what are we going to have then? We're going to have a form that's going to have a border around it. It's going to have a legend at the top of it. It's going to have a text box that's got email in front of it. And then it's going to have a line of text above a drop-down list, and it'll display one of those four choices once you click the drop-down caret on it. But the one that it will display by default would be what? The first one on the list, which would be web development. And underneath it, we just have our hyperlinks. Do you agree? Yes, no? Okay. You guys actually have that in front of you, or just like whatever you say, Jay? Because it doesn't do you any good if you don't have it in front of you. All right, then number 2, fill in the missing code. Only give me what's missing. So we go down the list and we see with these blue underscores what's missing. So we've got in our form tag method equal. So the method's missing. So what's the most secure version to use?
Post.
The post, yeah. So it would be method equal post. And then action, you would have to specify whatever script you need to run to process that information out of the form. So you would put something like survey.php in there. PHP stands for personal homepage. At least that's what it was when it was first created. But what it really is a server-side script.
Is that what we're putting for action equals?
Yes. So for action equal, you would say survey.php within the quotes. You keep the quotes. You got to put the method in the file name in quotes. And then down underneath, input type equal radio. So this is a radio button. And the thing about radio buttons is they're mutually exclusive from each other, right? And you would have to associate the same name for all your radio buttons. You understand why we call them a radio button, right? Because you can only have one active at a time. Because if you're listening to radio, not that anyone actually pokes presets anymore, but you can only have one active station at a time. So if you look at these 3 radio buttons, so I've got 3 different values, right? So it's like, hey, what's your favorite search engine? Yahoo, Google, and Bing. You see the second of the 3. What does it have associated with the name?
Survey.
Yes. So if they're radio buttons and they're mutually exclusive, guess what they all have to have?
The same name.
Very good. They have to have the same name.
Would that also apply to the one beneath it?
It does. So all 3 of those, name, equal, they all have to be survey because the second one is survey. You must do that if you're going to have users pick one of a cluster of options. And there can be only one because it's a cluster of radio buttons. Make sense? And then what do we have missing on this form after we've gone to the trouble of collecting information from the user about their favorite search engine?
Oh, never mind. I was going to say the closing form tag, but that's there.
Yeah, the closing form tag's there. What are you going to do with information once you collect it? What are you going to do with it?
Some kind of action? Give them some kind of a response?
Well, we want to collect that information and send it off to the server for processing, right? So guess what so guess what we're missing on that form?
Something to submit it.
Yeah, we're missing the submit button. Very good. So that very last line should be inside the left and right angle brackets. We need an input, which is a self-contained tag, and type equal, in quotes, submit. So what's missing there is the word input, space, type equal, and then in quotation marks, submit. You need a submit button. You should probably have a reset button too, but at least the submit button. Otherwise, how does the user send the information you just collected on the form off to the server for processing? So that's what's missing there. All right, so now let's look at number 3. Find the error. Find the coding errors in the following subscription form. So HTML in the head, there's the title, find the error, header's fine, there's our body, there's a paragraph. So whatever's going on here, if there's a problem, it's inside what? The form. So it's a container tag and a container element. So I've got a form, a closing form. Inside I've got action equal get, and then method equal newsletter.php. Okay, I wouldn't use a get, but all right. And then I've got a label, and labels are useful for assistive technology. So email, input type equal text box, name equal email, ID equal email. They should match, good. Again, the ID is used in the HTML on the page to identify those features. And then the name is what is used as the identifier when you send information off to the server. That's like the variable name or the field name as far as the server identifying that field and then its value. Okay, so that looks okay too, except label's misspelled. You see my closing label tag?
And also your beginning one.
Yeah, that's spelled wrong too. Okay. And then a break. And then I've got input button equal submit. And then input type equal rest. Okay, so what do we have? What's wrong so far? We've got the label. We caught the 2 label tags, right? Misspelled opening and closing label tags. And more it says type equal.
Rest or whatever.
Well, see where it says type equal text box? Text box isn't a type. It's just,
okay.
It is a text box, but the input type is text, not text box, it's just text. And then as far as having a submit button, it's not button equals submit. What is it? It's type equals submit, remember? We just did that one above. Input type equals submit. So it does give you a submit button. It's just that the syntax here is wrong. They're the wrong keywords. So you do want an input, or a submit button rather, but you don't say input and then specify the field type as a button. It should be input type equals submit. It shouldn't be button equals submit. And then we also have a reset button, except it should say what? Not rest.
Reset.
Reset. Okay. So how many do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 errors in that code, all in that form. Okay. I give you hands-on 1 through 6. Let's do those. So it says write the HTML code to create a text box named user that will be used to accept the username of web page visitors. The text box should allow a maximum of 30 characters to be entered. So a minor miracle happened over the weekend in that I kind of sort of got Dreamweaver running on my Podium computer. Yeah, how about that? So let me pull that up, or try to pull that up. Sometimes it doesn't work. There's a firewall here at the college that won't let the Adobe server validate me as a user, but we'll We'll see what it does today.
Is Dreamweaver known for being unsteady?
Well, it depends on what you mean by unsteady.
Mine just usually, whenever I try to close it and I still have documents open, it tells me it's not responding before it shuts down.
It's slow to respond on certain computers. So that's what's going on. I mean, it really is a behemoth of a program.
I wasn't sure if that was also Melanie's issue. I just wanted to say that's something I was experiencing.
Right.
Yeah, it does that on mine too, and sometimes it just goes splurt and dies on me.
Mine too takes a long time and just stops responding. If I have too many windows open.
Yeah, it's a real resource hog, and I've noticed even on an i7 computer with lots of memory, it takes a while for it to shut down. And you're right, if you have a whole bunch of other things open at the same time, it does bog down the performance. So I guess, yeah, it's flaky. All right, so here we are in split view, and it says to create a text box, right? So I could cheat, and no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it the hard way. So let's come down here in the body, and then I'm going to have an input field, right? And then it would be type equal what? Text, correct? And then you'd have to have a name, and then what do you want to call it? What are we supposed to get here? A username, right? So, hey, why don't we call it username? And then the ID would be what? Same thing, ID equal username. You have to make sure you match your quotes. And then maximum length is the attribute. What did they say to use as the maximum length? 30. But you got to put that in quotes, okay? And then what about the overall length of the field? You want to have a little breathing room, don't you? So how about size equal 35? Would that do the job? I mean, you don't have to put a size attribute there. Okay. So what did I forget to do? I didn't put anything in front of it, right? Like a username. So how about username? There it is. Oh, see, it's appearing above. You guys can see my screen, right? Okay, there it is. There's my form, right? Or at least my input field. What about, that was 1A, correct? What about 1B? It says a group of radio buttons that website visitors can check to vote for their, oh man, bad word to use today. Vote for their favorite month of the year. Okay, so
November.
You're casting your vote? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to have input again, right? And then what's the type? Radio, correct? And then the name, let's give it a meaningful name. Name equal, how about fave month? And it's case sensitive. And then the ID would be, well, this is where you change it based upon the different buttons. You have to have a different ID now. They all have the same name because they are all referring to that particular field. But the ID is going to change based on the buttons because they are mutually exclusive of each other. So the ID for the first one, how about fave? How about fave 01? Because we're going to have 12, right? And then the value would be what you actually return to the server. So let's just say 1 for our month. And then inside these tags, or rather past the input tag, but before break, how about we put the name of the month? January, okay? So I'm going to copy that and then paste. Okay. So input type equal radio, name equal favorite month, ID favorite 01, value is going to be 1. That all looks decent. And then now we have to change our ID here. So it's going to be favorite 02, favorite 03, favorite 04, favorite 05, and so on, okay? And then what would you spit out on the page? February, March, April, May, and June.
Jay, you closed the inputs too soon.
Yeah, shouldn't it be written like the one for username? Or should it be-
Yeah, you're right. Thank you. I did that on purpose. No, I'm just hungover from last night. There we go. And of course, Dreamweaver was complaining about it, wasn't it? See the red line numbers there? Okay, I don't know why it's complaining about this one though. Oh, that's why. There we go. Okay. Isn't that useful? How about that? A development environment that actually shows you where you've got errors in HTML and CSS. Okay, so what do we have up top now? Let's put a break there. Break. So look at my live view. There are my radio buttons, right? See how they're mutually exclusive? Wasn't that cool? Yes, no? It'd be even cooler
Did they
if
add
I...
a new month?
Pardon?
Did they add a new month? Because I thought it was June and not Jane.
Did I mention the hangover part? Okay. So, and so on, right? I don't need to type in the other 6 months to illustrate the point. So you have to have the same name for the field, but your ID varies because these are separate selections. And because they're radio buttons associated with the favorite month, right? I could have other radio buttons on the same page, but these are the same cluster, and they're the same cluster because I have what? I have the same name on it. Now, if I wanted to get fancy, what could I put here? If I wanted to have these things structured together, what could I do? What if I wanted them to clearly look like they were the same logical choice? I could use a field set,
Field
right?
set. Yeah.
So if I put a field set here, and then how about this? How about a legend? And then inside the legend, I can put pick your favorite month, and I close my legend, and then I close my field set down here. See how see how Dreamweaver just put that in there? It'll auto-complete. What do you think? Isn't that better looking? That's pretty cool, isn't it? And you get all this stuff for free, and that, you know, you don't have to write your own code to do it. They're just features built into HTML5. Okay, so that was number 2, or no, rather 1B, right? There's a lot of sub tasks in this first question. What about number C? A select list, which is also like it's called a drop-down. So a select list that asks website visitors select their favorite social networking site. So I'm going to have a what? A select. And then I have to have a name assigned to it. So name equal, what do you want to call it? How about Fave SNS, social networking site? And then the ID should be the same, right? Fave SNS for social networking site. I mean, you have discretion in terms of how to pick the identifiers for these fields, but you can't have things like embedded blanks and special characters. My recommendation is it is case sensitive, right? Just like if you've got a programming background, variables are case sensitive. The rules that you would use to craft names in HTML and CSS are the same rules that you would apply to picking variable and method or function names in a programming language. So just pick something meaningful, right? So we can make sense of it. So that would be the start of my select, and then a select demands the use of a in select. Notice Dreamweaver stuck that in there. And I'm going to indent just to make it readable, but I don't have to do that for the browser. So inside my drop-down list, I have to list the options. So guess what the word is here, the reserved word to use? It's option. And then you have to associate a value with it. So the value will be what's displayed in the drop-down list. So value equal, how about none selected? This is the first one that will be displayed. And let's tell them what to do. Select your favorite social networking site. And if I have an open option, this is a container tag, so I need a closing option. Okay, so that's my first option. Nothing's been picked yet. What about the next one? Another option, right? How many did it tell you how many to use? It didn't, did it? It just said a select list. So we have to make up our own options here. So how about the next one? How about Google? That'd be okay? Google. And then how about, it's Google Plus actually, isn't it? The social networking version. And then you have to close that option tag, and then another one, option. And then this time it would be the value is, oh, come on, Facebook, right? Aren't you all on Facebook?
I'd rather not be this morning.
Me too.
Don't go there. I'm going to start crying. It'll be recorded. I don't get it. Okay, so Facebook. And then I'm like one of the 10 people on the planet that's not on Facebook. You won't find me on Facebook. And then one more. Option, value equal. How about LinkedIn? That'd be okay, isn't it? LinkedIn makes sense because you want to have a LINKEDIN. So these would be the values that if they were selected would be sent off to the server associated with the name or the variable. You can think of it as a variable, as the value associated with the name fave SNS. Make sense? I mean, you can only pick one of these things. So they're all clustered under the same drop-down list. So that's why the drop-down list has that particular name. The value, again, is what gets sent off to the server associated with that name. Just like the radio buttons all have the same name. And the value that you pick out of the radio buttons is what gets associated with that name that you chose to flag or track that piece of data. Make sense? So this is just what gets sent off. That's not what gets displayed. So now we have to put within the angle brackets what gets displayed. Linked in, right? And then I close the option. Okay, does that look good? I don't know. Let's look up above. Oh, that's so cool. See? Beats the heck out of Notepad, doesn't it? Yeah, let's put a couple of breaks.
Wouldn't you rather have some kind of a legend at the top rather than having select your favorite social networking site as the first option? That doesn't seem to fit to me.
Well, so Sue, I guess it depends upon how dense a form you have and like the sophistication of your audience. I guess the answer is it depends. It depends on what you're trying to do and how much information you've got. Generally with a drop-down list, if what you really want people to do, if you want to force them to pick an option, you could use these radio buttons, right? I mean, I could have put up here, pick your favorite social networking site, and I could have listed all the ones for them to pick, and then I could have had a catch-all radio button that said other. But if I'm going to list a whole bunch of options, then I'm going to eat up a lot of real estate on my web page. And think again about how we develop our web pages. It used to be people developed for a desktop, and then as an afterthought, well, how can I redesign this website and restructure it with a different style sheet to make it run on a tablet or a mobile device, right? But the book and I both recommend now, don't even use the desktop as your starting point. Use the mobile device as your starting point, like design for the mobile web. And then maybe it'd work out and expand to a desktop. So with the limitation of a small screen as your overriding concern, I would want to make them as compact as possible. So I would not put a bunch of radio buttons out here. I would use a drop down, and I would only display one item, the default. And the default here is nothing's been selected. And you can even go so far as to make the choice mandatory. Now, not all browsers do that, but if I actually say that is one of the attributes in this input field that it's required, the user wouldn't be able to process their form unless they picked one of these options. So, I mean, you know, I guess it all depends on your audience and the device you're going to run off of, but I would vote for making it as brief as possible. So that was C. What about D? A field set and a legend with the text shipping address around the following form controls: address line 1, I'll say address line 2, city, state, and zip. So we're going to have a field set with some contact information around it. So let's come up here and then break. Now I have to have what? Field set, which I already did above. Field set, and I'm going to have to close it. Okay. Let me scroll down here so you guys can see it on the screen. So within the field set, I have to put a name for this field. So name equal, no, actually, that's for the drop down. Never mind. Okay, so field set, we're good. But we want a legend. That was it. So within the legend, what's it supposed to say? Shipping address. So there's my legend in my field set. See what I've got right above in my design view, or live view rather? There it is, right? I just don't have any fields in it yet. So now what do I have to add? Some text boxes, right? So I have to add, what was the first one? Address line 1. Address line 1. And then an input field. Type equal what? What do I put for a text box? Text. Okay, so the type is a text box. Have to give it a name to track that value. How about adder1? And then ID is adder, they have to match. Adder1. And then I should probably put a break. Okay. Let's copy that.
Wouldn't you need to close the input before putting the break?
Yeah, I would. Thank you. I did that on purpose. Okay, so look above. Does that look right? That looks right. I mean, if I wanted to, I could put other things in there, right? I could put a field width and maximum number of characters and that kind of thing. I could also flag it as required. So address line 1, address line 2, adder 2, adder 2. Notice that Dreamweaver is flagging this line in red until I fix what's wrong with it. So that's address line 1, address line 2. What's the next one I have to do? City, state, and zip, right? So this would be city. I can type. Type equal what? Text, name equal what? City, they have to match. City, and then I guess I can put them all on separate lines. Or I could just tab over if I want to do that. I could put in non-breaking spaces, but we'll just leave it like this. So city, and then what? State and zip, right? See how it's flagging them? See how Dreamweaver is saying, you got something wrong in lines 32 and 33 because I've repeated the name field. So city, state, zip code. And then here it would be state, zip, and zip. Okay, look up above. Oh, how cool, right? And I could go through and put fine controls there. In fact, for like a state, I could even make it what? A drop-down list. And I'd have all the states where people could just pick it out of the drop-down list. Okay, so that takes care of D. I don't know, do you find these fun? I think these are really fun because I get to do something cool on my page with very little effort on my part. That's why I like these. So where am I now? That was D, correct? So now 1E. An image called signup.gif is an image button on a form. So I don't actually have that file. But if I were to create it, the link rather, let's come down here. So what would I put? I would put input, right? It's an input tag. And then the type would be what? There's a list of these, right, in your book. Type is image. Yeah. So type equal image. And then the source, SRC, is where you would specify the name of the file. And then what do they tell you to use? Signup.gif, right? Now, if they hover over an image, what will they see if you don't provide alternate text? They'll see the name of the file, correct? Do you want people to hover over your image button and have it say signup.gif? No. So alt text. What do you think would be a good thing to say if they hovered over your submit button?
Sign up or submit.
Yeah. Was it a sign up? Yeah, how about sign up? Yeah, I like that. Good suggestion. So that's what it would display. If, of course, we had the image, which, we don't. So it's gonna have the sign up there, but it's not gonna actually have an image. Okay, that's the syntax. That's how you would structure that. So that would be 1E. What about 1F? So 1F, it says a hidden input control with the name user ID. So why do you use hidden controls on your page? User can't see them.
But the admin can.
Yeah, it's a way to store information on the page as you're collecting and processing information. It's kind of like a way of creating variables in a program that holds information you need to keep track of while the thing's executing. So that's why it's hidden. It's the code's there to serve some type of function, but it isn't a function that the user needs to be aware of or see. So it would be another input tag, and now the type is hidden, and then you have to still have a name. And what do they? With the name user ID, right? They tell you right in the problem. Name equal user ID. So then what does the ID have to be? ID has to match, right? And again, these are just ways to identify that control on the form. The ID is used within the HTML to figure out where that is, just like you've used IDs before in your HTML. And the name is the tag or variable name, essentially, that's associated with the value that you send over to the server for processing. So then we close our input tag. Okay, so much for that one. What's next? Where are we? See, oh look, I can't see it. It's not there. It is there, I just can't see it. So that was 1F. What about 1G? A password box form control with the name password. So this again, input is our tag, and then type here. See, if you type text, it'll just display what people are typing. But if you put type equal, it's password, right? See how Dreamweaver will show you what the allowable values are once you start typing. So type equal password, and then the name equals, how about P-word? And then the ID has to match P-word. And then what does it look like on the page? Well, this is what it looks like on the page, right? Although I didn't put any text in front of it. So how about I do that? Enter password. Come here. See it? So watch what happens when I type. So it won't display my text. It'll just use an asterisk to basically, hide whatever I'm typing. That was F.
How do you add a button that allows you to show the password? Because I've seen them a few times and it's like, wow, that's neat.
A button to show the password.
Yeah, there's on some websites when you're entering your password, you can choose whether or not you want it to be hidden.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. So there is a way to do that. You have to do anything dynamic on a web page. You have to write your own program and embed it in the page to do that, to present that as an option, and that's called JavaScript. So you would put JavaScript into your page that after a user made a choice, you would then dynamically reconfigure your web page. Like you could actually say, hey, if you pick show password, rewrite this area of my HTML to use a text box rather than a password box. It's actually quite simple to do, but you have to get your head around the fact that the HTML that you just sweat blood into constructing, you write programs that actually modify it on the fly. It's like literally you are dynamically redefining your HTML and your CSS on the page. And at the broadest level of abstraction, and you have to have a sense of the object-oriented paradigm to really get your head around it. Basically, all of these elements that are on a page are objects, and objects have attributes and behaviors associated with them. And when you're abstracting your web page, you can think of these constructs as like basically blocks that you can shuffle around. It's kind of like the box model, and using Flexbox for your design tools. In fact, if you look over here, since you can see my Dreamweaver page, see where it says DOM? DOM stands for Document Object Model, and it allows you to deal with your web page in a structural form with these different elements that you can shuffle around and have them behave differently. So I can open and close my head, and I can see what's here. I can open and close my body and every element on it. So I can actually dynamically change any one of these structural elements with code that I embed in my page. And that's something that we do in 219 when you get into client-side web development. And then the capstone course is server-side web development, where the server will send down content to restructure your page on the fly. So that's how, that was kind of a longer answer than what you wanted for that nature of the question, right? But
that was great. Thank you.
The short answer is you put a script in there and it will dynamically change the structure of your page. Okay. So what was that? That was G. What about H? So H says a form tag to invoke server-side processing using the PHP script at the Pearson website and the post method, which is the more secure of the two. So this one would be, well, you'd have to have a form tag, right? So you'd have to have a form tag. And then after the form tag, you have to specify the method. And the method is post. And notice Dreamweaver is automatically presenting to me, as I type in these reserved words, the attributes, the values that are associated or possible. So here's where you put the script, action equal, and you'd literally just type http:// web dev basics, B-A-S-I-C-S, webdevbasics.net, scripts.demo.php. Isn't that the one they have there? Did I type it right? I think so. Yeah. And that's it. Okay, but then of course you also have to close your form. So there. Okay, so and of course you're not going to see that. That's just what's associated with the form. So if you hit a submit button, that's what it would do. It would take that information, whatever is contained within the form. Of course, what's contained within this form? Nothing, right? Because we just wanted to do the action. Okay, so that takes care of number one. We doing okay? What about?
That was a long one.
It was. It was number one, but it was really what? 1, 2, 3. It was really like 8 questions in one. So what about number 2? Write the HTML to create a form that accepts requests for a brochure to be sent in the mail. Sketch out the form on paper before you begin. Well, that's what the book suggested, right? To construct a wireframe, just like we did with our page layout. And then once you've got an idea of what your form needs to look like, how you want it structured, what type of controls on it, then worry about shoehorning that into the syntax of the HTML and the CSS. But I'm just going to jump right in here. So this is number 2. So I'm going to have a form. So a form, and then I should specify my method. Method equal, and then it should be post. That's the most secure. And then action equal. And it doesn't have anything. It doesn't specify. But I could just put the name of a generic script, like form.php. This is just a generic script. It's a placeholder. So that opens my form. And then here I close my form. And now I put the content in there. So what do I need? I need a name, address, city, state, zip. That's all the contact information, right? For the brochure. Didn't I already do that up here? I did, didn't I? So I'm just going to grab this stuff. Okay, so copy that and then come down here and inside my form, paste. Okay, and of course it's going to complain because, you know, I've already got it up here. So let's get rid of that. All right. So address, city, state, zip. Now, after I go to the trouble.
Also want a name? Yeah.
Pardon?
Wouldn't you also need to include like a name?
Oh, I didn't put the name, did I? Yeah, I would need a name. Thank you. Type equal text. Name equal name. And then I'll put uppercase name. ID equal name. Okay, and then a break. All right, so yeah, name, city, state, zip, and there it is. Name, city, state, zip, only we don't want it to say shipping address. How about just mailing address? Would that be okay? There it is, mailing address, name, address line 1, 2, city, state, zip. Now, I went to all the trouble of collecting this information on the form. What am I doing with it? So far, I'm doing a big fat nothing, right? So I would want to make sure that I send it somewhere. So I'm going to have a submit button. So that's another type of input field. So input type equal what? Submit, correct? And then the value associated with that would be submit. Okay. And then probably a space between buttons. So how about a non-breaking space? That's because, again, your browser is going to ignore any tabs in your source file. If you really want a space, you have to use an ampersand, and it's what? NBSP semicolon. Let's put in 2, ampersand, NBSP semicolon. And then now how about the reset button? Input type equal reset. Well, that's the basics of a form. What's it look like? That makes sense. I've got a submit and a reset, and then I've got the mailing address information as part of a field set, and I'm using a legend to, flag that logical cluster of fields. Well, that'll work.
Do you need to put a space in between the ampersand and the second input? I just couldn't tell if there was.
A space between the...
So it doesn't, yeah.
Here? No.
Okay.
That semicolon's part of the code for the non-breaking space. I have to literally put those 5 characters in there to get a space on the browser's page. But what about this business? Name, address line 1, address line 2. I guess I'm okay with that. City, yeah, that's a reasonable length. What about state? Do I really want people to type in like the name of the state? No, I probably just want a state abbreviation. And to make that obvious without telling them to only type in 2 characters, I can add some things here to my text box. So I could add to the state, I could put a maximum length of, how about 2? That would work, wouldn't it? And then if that's the maximum length, if I want it to affect how it's going to be displayed, so that max length specifies how many characters someone can type, but it doesn't specify how big the text box looks on the form. That's the size attribute. So I could put a size, I don't know, 4. See how it shrunk it? I could put a size of 2 if I wanted to, right? So it's even smaller. Let's leave it at 4. See what I did? I shrunk it, right? To try to encourage people to give me a zip, or a state abbreviation rather. And then as far as zip goes, what's the maximum number of characters people could give me as a zip code? What is it?
5.
9. Well, 9 if you use the expanded one, right? And then the size field, let's make it just 2 bigger, 11. So see how the zip code field now shrunk? Just suggestions, trying to make that look better. And again, this is just a generic server-side script. So that was number what? Number 2. And you could do something different. If you actually took a stab at the homework before you came in here today, yours doesn't have to look just like that. What about number 3? Write a web page with a form that accepts feedback from website visitors. Use the HTML5 input type equal email along with the required attribute to configure the browser to verify the data entered. Also configure the browser to require user comments with a maximum length of 1,600 characters accepted. Place your name and email address at the bottom of the page. Hint, sketch out the page on the form before you start drawing this stuff up or coding the stuff up, which is a really good piece of advice. So I'm just going to modify the one I just created, okay? So here's my form. I'm still going to have method equal post. My script now, it'll be some type of generic script called, well, this is for feedback, right? So I'd probably have some type of script on the server called feedback.php. And then I'm not going to have my field set anymore. Get rid of that. And then I still have my name. Well, I don't have contact information this time, right? It's just name and email address and comments, correct? So I'm still going to have a submit button, and I'm still going to have a reset button. So we'll leave that alone. We'll get rid of these. Okay, and then instead of address line, what do I need? I need email, right? Wants the email address. So how do I enforce using HTML5 someone giving me a reasonable email address, like so-and-so at whatever dot whatever? I can use my input type of what? This is with HTML5. Email, right? If I use type equal email, it will force the user to give me something that reasonably looks like an email. And then what should I call it with the name field? Email ID should be email. Now, I've got a name. So that's a text box, name. Okay. And then an email, but is that required? What were the instructions? It says make the email address required. So how do I actually make the email address required? And again, this is a feature that's not supported in older browsers. And if you get a browser that's too old to support some of these new features, it just ignores that enhancement. It doesn't like not display. It'll still display. So what do we put here to make it required? We use the required attribute. I guess that was a trick question, right? Required equal required. It's either required equal required or required equal, what is it, no or not required? Okay, so that's going to make sure that you can't submit the form unless someone actually types in an email address. So now we want a comments field, correct? So comments, and then a break, and then past the comments, now we want what? A text box. Not just I'm sorry. We want a scroll box. We want to specify how many what the maximum number of characters are, and we have to parse that up into like how many rows and how many columns. So how do we do that? We have to use the element text area. So it's text area. And then here's where you format the text area. So it could be rows equal, I don't know, how about 5 rows? And then you have to specify how many columns. How about columns equal 80 is generally like the end of the screen. And then we have to give it a name. So this is the comment, right? So how about we call it comment, and the ID has to match. Okay. And then I have to specify a maximum length. How do I do that? What's the attribute? Max length. And it has to be in quotes. What was the maximum length? 1600, right? Isn't that what they told me to do? Okay. I think that does it. Let's look. Whoops. Oh, what did I screw up? Something over here. Text area, rows, columns, name, ID, maximum length. What did I miss? What did I not do?
If you hover over
Close your
47,
text
it should
area.
show you. If you, like the number where it's highlighted red, if you hover over the red 47, it'll let you know what you did.
Hovering.
You click on it or something.
Tag must be
paired.
I need a closing text area? I thought that was a self-contained tag. Maybe not. Okay. I guess not. Okay.
Okay, then. Weird.
Great. Thanks. So now you know I'm not perfect. So there's my, I thought it was a self-contained tag. So look, oh, I can type in here. Okay. So there's my submit and reset. What if I hit submit? See, it goes to the email. Why?
Because it's required.
Yeah, it's required. Okay. So that was which one? That was number 3. Man, I gave you a lot of homework, didn't I? What about number 4? Someone's got their mic open. There we go. So the acoustics in the room are terrible. So it says create a web page using a form that accepts a website visitor's name, email, birth date. Use the HTML5 type equal date attribute to configure a calendar control in the browser that supports this attribute value. Place your name and email address at the bottom of the page. Oh yeah, I forgot to do that. That's not a big deal. You can stick that on the bottom of the page with your footer. And it just says sketch the thing out before you do it. So I don't need to show you how to put your name and email address at the bottom of the page in a footer, right? You just put the footer, use the footer element in your web page. So let me come back up here and modify my feedback screen, okay? So this was the answer for number 3. Now I'm going to modify it for number 4. So I'm still going to have a post method. I'm still going to have a feedback. And then I'm still going to have a name and an email. And then I'm going to have a text box for the name. And I'm going to have a required email address. So that doesn't change. Only now I'm not going to have the comment area, correct? That's the one that I'm getting rid of for number 4. It doesn't say anything about a comment block, right? It says to make sure you put a date in there for your birth date. So it would be birth date and then a break. And then this is where I would put my date field. So input, what's the type? Date, right? That's the one that pulls up the calendar. And then I have to give that field a name. How about we call it B-Day? And then the ID has to match B-Day. And then keep my submit and reset. I think that's it. That's all I got to do. That's the only modification. What's it look like? So here it is. Oh, look. You get my calendar feature. Okay. That's kind of cool. And you can modify these things with lots of different attributes. What's next? That was number 4. By the way, and I didn't show you any of these things, but if we had a client using our website who had some type of disability, and they use some type of text-to-speech capability, or let's say that they've got limitations in terms of using a mouse. They can only like tab through. Remember when we talked about the features in this chapter that allowed you to define like hotkeys and the order in which the tabs would be visited, or the fields would be visited when you press the tab? To be able to take advantage of those assistive technologies in front of all of these elements, you need to put the label. So you should use really in front of like birth date, for instance. And I should probably have done this for all of them, but I'm just going to illustrate the point. You can put label in front of it. And then you can close the birth date with the closing label tag. So when you label these things, they will support the assistive technologies. So you should put label in front of all of these. Anytime you got a text field on the screen, if you put label in front of it, a text-to-speech would actually read that to someone. But you got to put the label in front of the field for it to do that. What about number 5? Number 5 is write a web page. By the way, when it says write a web page, I don't want you to write a web page. You can just keep adding it to whatever you're going to create and then submit to me. And you could submit it as a Word document, or you can submit it as an HTML. I don't care. But you just submit one file, okay? Just lump it all together and put it in one file. It doesn't, it's actually probably better at this point if you do submit it as an HTML file to me as part of your homework, because, you've developed it that way. Whatever's flexible for you. I'm not actually running it. I'm the browser. I'm reading it and grading it based on what I see, not how it functions. That's not the same as your running case. The running case actually download your files and run them. So number 5, write a web page that contains a music survey form similar to the example shown in figure 9.34. Well, what does 9.34 look like? What page? Why don't they just tell me what page it's on?
438.
Thank you. Oh, it is. It's the next page. I'm so stupid. Okay, wow, that looks like a lot of work. Because, you know, it is. And I gave you number 6 as well, didn't I? Or is those, no, it is 1 through 5. I thought I gave you 1 to 6. Is there no 6? No. Yeah, I did. I said 1 through 6 in the instructions. But there's only 5. Okay, so I guess that's a typo in the assignment. Didn't I assign you 1 through 6?
Yeah.
And there is no 6, right?
There's not a 6 now.
Wow. Okay, more evidence I'm not perfect. So
That's okay. There's usually 6 of them.
yeah, so it's only 1 through 5. So those of you who are looking for number 6, stop now. But I did give you the focus on web design. And what about that one? So it says create a web page, list of the URLs, at least 2 useful resources, brief description for information you found most interesting or valuable. So you don't actually have to create a web page. Well, what do I want to do with focus on web design? I guess I do. I guess I want you to submit a separate HTML for focus on web design. Just call it FOWD-9 for the focus on web design for chapter 9. And inside that HTML file, you're basically writing up the answer to this research, and then you're going to create this tiny little form to include on that page. So that's what you're going to submit to me for homework for the focus on web design part. The rest of this can be either a Word document that contains the answers to review questions, or it can be an HTML. Look, here's the bottom line. I don't care how you structure it. I mean, I can figure it out. I'm a pretty bright guy in spite of the mistakes. Submit however many files you want to submit. I'll look at them. I'll figure it out. But I do want you to do that research.
Which 2 files are we submitting for the case study? I know one of them is the new reservations.
Yes, so the case study, we're going to make this really trivial modification to the Pacific.css, and we're creating a brand new HTML page for the reservations. So that's, you only have 2 files you're submitting.
Okay.
Left your mic open. Okay, that makes sense? So I'm out of time, right? Because it took me so long to get started. What do I want to do with this? I really don't want to get behind, and I really don't want to. What do I want to do? What do you think? You have suggestions? It's going to take at least like 10 or 15 minutes to properly do number 5, and it's going to take probably about 10 or 15 minutes to do the running case. You want me to just do that next week and then we extend some due dates? Or do you want me to record it on my own and post it for your viewing pleasure at a later time convenient for you? What about it, sports fans? What do you want to do? Those of you in the virtual classroom, it's not every day you get to decide your own fate. So here are the 2 options. Number 1, I'll just do it next week and give you extra time to submit it. Or number 2, I'll just record it after you leave here because I'm out of class time, and then you can view it between now and Sunday.
Would you be demonstrating the number 5, the focus on web design, and also the case study during that?
I'll do number 5 in the case study. The focus on web design is you're on your own.
Okay.
So option A,
Yeah, do it later.
do it later.
Or- Yeah, do it after this.
Sure, just kick the can down the road, right?
No, just do the recording.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
you
she
want the
means, like, do
recording.
recording so that we
Yeah.
can.
Okay, all right. Anyone else have an opinion? No? Other than that the audio sucks? All right, so that's what we'll do. So have a wonderful rest of the week, right? If you want to drown your sorrow, I'll probably see you over at the livery. And I'll finish up number 5, and I'll record the running case solution, and I'll post that here by the end of the day. So you'll have a good 4 days to go over about a 30-minute supplemental video that covers that, all right? So when I post them into Canvas, you'll see the recorded lecture for today, part 1, which of course you were here for, and then you'll see the recorded lecture for the day, part 2, which I'll do solo and you'll view later, okay? Any questions about anything? I don't know, do you like these? Do you like these controls? I think these are pretty cool features.
They are, yeah.
Okay, so any questions about anything procedurally? We good?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Jay, when will we see some grades?
Pretty damn quick. I've downloaded and I've graded all these things independent of Canvas. I've just had so many tech issues. Not that I'm going to have to go and edit this out, right? Hold on. Let me